Hello, it's Candy. I am finally getting in touch with you guys. It's been a very hectic few days, but I did post several pictures and videos of my baby, so I think you can see that Tor Edward McCarthy has come. And I really want to give you a very quick birth story so that you can kind of catch up with me. I have some videos from the birth that are not really, they're just more like scenes from it, and there's nothing like from the actual birth, unfortunately. But my husband was really in that moment. But we got a little bit of like me going through contractions and things like that. I'll probably post some of that if it's if I can upload some of that. My birth story is interesting. I basically ended up having a lot of things not go the way I expected them to, and I really feel that on the other side of that I learned a lot, because I think that I had certain expectations and I made certain judgments about choices that other people make and choices that I would never make, and I don't think you can know that till you're on the other side. I don't think there's any way to know. So for me, my experience was that we chose to be induced. And the reason for that was my doctor was possibly not going to be around. I was experiencing some low fluid, and we were worried about calcifications on the placenta and things of that nature. And I was, I have to be honest, just getting really big and really tired and really losing sleep. So we chose to be induced, and we went in on September 6th at 5 o'clock, and they administered me some Cervidil, which is, I think I'm saying that right. It's this gel that they give to you, they put it in you, and hopefully it will start contractions. And it was kind of my doctor's way of trying to let me have this natural birth, was to do that. Hold on, I've got a baby that might be getting fussy, so let me see. So the doctor wanted to give me a chance to have a natural birth, so we did that, and she had a plan that we would try, that's the reason I went in the night before, because the induction she planned on doing Pitocin and the real deal and breaking my waters the next day, but she wanted to give me time for the Cervidil to go in, and maybe then I could still have a water birth, because once they do Pitocin you can't. But, so she wanted to give me a chance to also have two gel deposits if I needed them and if I qualified for them. So I got the first one at around 6 o'clock, and I remember my husband ordered some food, and we were sitting there, and I was in a really good mood and really nervous, but really excited mostly, because I was going to finally have my baby eventually, and I didn't know what was ahead of me. And the nurse came in, and she was really nice, and she checked me again, and I was 1 centimeter still, but very loose centimeter, and dilated and 75% effaced, and we were good, ready to go for the gel. So I went for the gel, and it was really funny, because almost immediately, and the gel doesn't work for everyone, I guess, but I was 40 weeks and 5 days pregnant. I'm pretty sure that I was actually late, like that I wasn't just, being a person being induced whose baby just was, the timing was off, because I charted and I did that whole thing, and my last menstrual period was November 27th. I always had 29-day cycles. I think that I was actually legitimately late, that this little fella just didn't want to quite come out yet. So I got the gel, and I almost immediately started feeling contractions, but they were very mild, but I was excited by them. Little did I know what was coming, but I was very excited by the contractions, and feeling them was really cool. And then all of a sudden, and I remember it was before the food came, and a lot of people told me I might not want to eat, and then some people said they were starving during labor, so I didn't know how I would feel. Well, I did not want to eat. I started having contractions. They were about 2 minutes apart, a minute apart, and they just started really gradual, and then they started getting really intense. And I started out kind of just moaning through them. I'd be like trying to do a low moan, like an om or something like that. And eventually it became more and more challenging to do that. And I would walk around. I remember my husband and he was so great. He was so wonderful. He like pressed on my back and like, you know, just helped me get through these really difficult contractions. And I was, sorry, I have to take this out. This is annoying me. I was kind of moaning, and we were moving from the ball, the bouncing ball, to the bed, to, I would just go to, I had to go pee constantly. I would just keep going pee, and I would sit there and I would pee, and then I would have a horrible contraction, and I would just kind of like try to move through it. It was very, very painful, and I think that the Cervidil makes the contractions a little bit harsher and closer together and not quite as regular, so I think that can make natural childbirth a lot harder. And I just kept walking around and like a zombie everywhere, and I started getting really, really down, and my husband was like, you can do this, and there is no such thing as any other way, and we're not getting an epidural, and we're going to do this. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I still didn't invoke our code word, which was, I'll tell you actually what the code word was when we get to it, but it's something that I took from my friend because it was her code word for the epidural, meaning I'm not kidding around anymore. And I didn't invoke that until it was a really, really, you know, really necessary. But I was going around, walking around like a zombie. I sang the entire song Purple Rain. I sang it from like start to finish. I'm a singer, so, you know, I used to sing that song a lot anyway, but it was definitely a different version than I would normally sing because I just couldn't really sing at that point. And then I was doing like this, like what I consider to be the pirates chant. I think that my husband thought it sounded like the Atlanta Braves chant, but either way, I was doing that. Whatever that was, it was just like this O-E-O-O type thing. And I was in a lot of pain, and I finally started saying, I need some kind of, I just wish I could get in the tub. When is she going to check me? I need some kind of like, you know, I need that water or something. And so finally the lady came, and she was like, well, I'm going to check you at you know, 5 a.m., but I can get the tub ready for you if you want to get in the tub. And they have a jacuzzi tub, so it wasn't the birthing tub yet. She's like, that might help you move along and, you know, give you a few contractions, and we'll work through the contractions and help you dilate further. So I was like, yes, please do that. So then she had to clean the tub, and it was taking forever. It took hours and hours and hours, and I was losing my mind. I was like, is the tub ready yet? And I'm just like, you know, trying to moan through the contractions and doing low tones, and my husband is like breathing through them with me. He was just so wonderful, and I'm just walking around bare ass naked at one point, like no one could get me, like my husband had to like, he was like, honey, let's put this gown on you before we walk you, you know, out, because we were walking out through the corridors a bit. And the nurses were really nice. We had like this like succession of nurses coming in for their different shifts. And they just kept getting nicer and nicer and cooler and cooler. I don't know why that was, but it was really interesting and funny. And so finally, this one, I remember Georgie was the name of the girl. The first girl, I can't remember her name, but Georgie was the name of the girl who was working with me when I was really going through a rough time with the Cervidil. And she was really trying to help me have this natural birth too and keep me from detouring. And that was a challenge for her and for my husband. We finally I'm like, where is this tub? Where is this tub? And it's almost 5 o'clock. And it's basically the time that they're going to check me again. And then they were going to either see how far I dilated, see if I labored on my own, and see how, you know, if I could do another dose of the gel, or if they wanted to just have me go to sleep, and the next day they would start Pitocin and break my bag of waters and do that whole thing. Which we kind of knew was going to be like really, you know, a very, very epidural-y kind of outcome probably. I mean, we didn't say that for sure, and I was really hating myself, by the way, for wanting a natural birth at that point. I was like, no, why did I do this to myself? Oh, me and my, you know, I don't want to deal with this, and now Joel's going to encourage me, and he's doing what I told him to do, and so anyway. I became kind of a monster. I started getting more and more like just unhappy, and then it was time, and finally the tub was ready at the same time as I was able to be checked, and Joel was like, well, do you want to be checked or do you want to get in the tub? Because you can't do both. If they start the gel again, you can't. And I was like, listen, I was like, I really want to be checked. How about if I'm checked? And then if I'm not that far along or if things or whatever, I'll get in the tub. And then if I am, I'll just take the gel again. We'll just see what happens. But I really want to find out what's going on because I'm just in so much pain and I don't even know. And he was like, okay. So it took Georgie a little bit, but she came in finally. She was very sweet too. She had a very soft touch to her, and she was very comforting person as well. And she came in and she checked me, and I was only 3 centimeters. So I had only really dilated 1 centimeter because I was almost a 2 basically when the loose 1 almost a 2 when they checked me last time. And I was devastated because it had been, you know, forever. It had been 8 hours since I was laboring, and I was laboring hard, and it was in my back too. I had some back labor, although he wasn't sunny side up, so I don't know, maybe he flipped or maybe it was just intense in my back. And I was just so defeated, and I couldn't believe it, and I was like, okay, I need to get in the tub or something. And she'd actually told me to get in the shower before that. I forgot that step, and so I went in the shower and had the hot water on me, and I just kind of chanted in the shower, and that was effective for me too. And then we went into the hot tub, and the hot tub was nice. It felt a little too hot to me, but it was nice and soothing, and we were just trying to think of our options, and we were just like, okay, well, we're gonna, I guess, you know, do the gel, but she had to monitor me for half an hour first, so for half an hour I had to get back in the bed and lay down and wait. So I did that. I laid down, and I waited, and she was like, listen, I gotta say, the contractions are pretty intense. The baby's getting a little bit stressed out, not terrible, but a little bit, and I wouldn't want to give you more gel at this point. But one thing I can do is I can give you, well, we have 2 options. I can give you some saline, and then hopefully that will soften the contractions and soften the labor, make them farther apart, and then we can give you some more gel once you're done, once the baggie is empty. She said, or I can, we can stop the whole thing now, and you can just continue, because I was laboring on my own, essentially, at that point. So you can continue to labor on your own the way you are. I can give you some Ambien, which will basically make it so that you sleep in between contractions, which I did end up taking, and it's the weirdest thing ever. You do. You kind of like sleep, and then you have this horrible pain. It really is very, very, very challenging. The pain was really difficult, and then you sleep, and then you have the pain again, and I was feeling pretty rough, and I was like, well, my only fear is that I'm going to get I was like, is the gel going to make it more intense? And she's like, probably. And I was like, my fear is I'm going to get the gel, and the gel's not going to work, and I'm going to make this longer and more intense for myself. But my husband convinced me, and we did it. We set up the saline bag to my IV, and I just kind of sat there, and I endured, and she gave me the Ambien, which made it so I kind of slept, but it was really, really hard. But I was like, I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to try to make this happen. And then I'm looking at the saline bag, and it's only like a quarter of the way empty, and I feel like it's been hours, and it's been so much pain, and I was like, okay, you know what? I don't want to do this. I just want to stop this and just not have more gel and just, you know, go to sleep and try to make it in the morning or whatever. And so finally he called her back, and she's like, well, you're almost done with the saline. Are you sure you don't want more gel? And I was like, I'm sure. I don't want this. I can't do it anymore. And she's like, okay. And oh dear, oh dear. Let me see, I might have to attend to him. So, no gel. I laid there, I had the Ambien, I was having horrible contractions in between. I started really, really screaming and moaning and getting to that point where people were hearing me, and where I was not a nice person. I was not a happy person at all. And she kind of, you know, she took off the saline, and I was just, several hours had passed, and finally it had been about 11 hours total that I was laboring on my own. And I just kept thinking about that 3 centimeters, and my husband was like, yeah, but just because you dilate 1 centimeter in 5 hours doesn't mean you won't dilate 5 centimeters in half an hour, so it's no indication. And he's right. He's absolutely right. He's so smart. He paid so much more attention to things than I even realized. And he was totally right, but I was totally done at some point. And I yelled out, Puerto Rico, which was which was my friend, because her husband and she and her husband kind of fell in love, and their first trip was to Puerto Rico. They had their wedding in Puerto Rico. So that was their code word, and she used it when she got her epidural, and I basically wanted to use it too because I thought it'd be funny, and I didn't know if I would end up using it, but I used it. I was like, Puerto Rico, I was like, honey, I was like, I can't do this. I was like, this is just not me at this point anymore. I was like, it's 11 hours. I'm just not dilated enough. I'm really, really in a lot of pain, and I feel so miserable. I need the epidural. I can't do it. I can't. And he was just like, okay, you know, and he was a little disappointed and a little sad for me because he knew that's what I wanted, but at the same time, I think he understood that at that point there was no coaching me out of it, and he did a really great job coaching me through 11 hours of labor. I was very lucky that Georgie came in and she was like, well, the anesthesiologist is in with another patient administering right now, but then they should be able to come right in for you, and she did. It was this Russian lady, and she was just like, oh, don't be afraid of me. Everybody's so scared of me. And I was like, I'm not scared of you. I was like, you are my angel. I was like, come here now. I don't want to have another contraction. I want this epidural before I have that contraction. I was in pain. And she was like, oh, okay, you know, and she's like, and the epidural, it doesn't really hurt the babies and this and that and whatever. She was kind of selling the epidural to me, and I was like, you don't have to sell it to me. I want it. I'm there now. And I will say this, I'm glad that I had 11 hours of labor without medication. I'm glad that I tried. I think a water birth would have been beautiful. At the end of the day, this was the better decision for me. But I think an epidural can cause complications, and I think inductions can too. So I was already kind of on this road that I put myself on, and, you know, that I have the wisdom now to know is a very personal journey, and you just don't know how you're going to go through something. So I got the epidural. It was the best, most amazing, and again, I've always hated when people say this because I'm like, oh no, don't discourage people from trying to be natural. And I really don't discourage you. Please try to be natural, or try to at least experience some of what labor is so that you know, and trust me, then the epidural, if you do get it, is so much better. Because I got this epidural, and I am telling you, my whole world, just the pain melted instantly. And again, I have these instant reactions to things. I don't know, it's just my body, I guess. Instantly, the pain melted. I felt better. I relaxed, and my husband just describes it as all of a sudden I was holding a pina colada on the beach. That's how I was acting. I was smiling. I was laughing. I wanted to cry with happiness. I felt so good. And it's funny because they checked me then at that point, and I was 5 centimeters. So I believe that I actually dilated quite a bit on my own in between the time of the last check with the Cervidil and the saline bag and the epidural. And I think that it was really good for me, and I think it's very good to get an epidural when you're that far along, especially. It helps things. Because the instant that I got my epidural and they've checked me, then my water broke. It was this loud, crazy pop, and I laughed and giggled at it, and I was like giggling and laughing and everything. I was just so happy. I felt so happy, and I was so tired. I was like sleeping, and then I was happy, and then I was joking, and I just was loving life again. And my water broke, and it was less than 4 hours after I got the epidural that I found out that I was 9.5 centimeters, almost 10 centimeters, almost ready to push that baby out. And they said, okay, and then finally they were like, okay, you're 10 centimeters. We just want you to wait a little bit longer because we want this baby to descend a little bit more. So you're about to push, but we want to descend. And I was like, I'm about to push. I can't believe this. And I was just like so excited, and I felt so good. But I started having some acid reflux, which was a big thing that I had during my pregnancy. I'm sure I mentioned it. And they gave me a little bit of medicine. I don't know what it was, and it made me kind of strangely drowsy. It was really weird. It didn't have effect right away when I was pushing, because I was pushing with the nurse initially. My legs were really numb, and my husband and the nurse both kind of lifted my legs up the way you see them do it. They told me to push like I was having a bowel movement, and I tried that, and I guess I did very well. And they started seeing, like, you know, they were like, we see some hair, a little bit of black hair, and I was like, oh. And I was so happy, and then I just started getting really drowsy. And the reflux, because I was like pushing my chin down, the reflux was burning in my throat and making it so I couldn't breathe, and I was supposed to breathe a certain way, and they kept telling me, breathe this way and grunt and hold the push, and I was trying. I was really working hard, but I was also not completely feeling as much sensation as I would have liked to, and that is something that happens with epidurals, I know, and that was one of the reasons I did want to avoid it initially. And I was also just kind of, you know, also this reflux was really bothering me, and I started feeling really drowsy, so I started feeling like, oh my god, I'm going to be too tired, I'm going to fall asleep, and I'm going to need a C-section because I'm not going to be able to push this baby out. But I was like, I have to try, and it was really hard, and I really didn't believe. I was trying so hard and working so hard. My doctor came at that point, and she was helping me through it. She's awesome. And I think I believed in my heart and soul that I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I was like, I've got to try. So I just kind of started pushing in this really, really weird, almost like, I don't know if this is doing anything, but kind of way, and I was just holding it even though it felt like I couldn't anymore. I was trying not to hold my breath, but it was like, the reflux was bad, and I was exhausted. I was just like very strange. And I think I had some Pitocin at that point. I know they gave me Pitocin at one point. So I was sitting there, and I'm trying to push the baby out, and I keep pushing and I keep pushing, and all of a sudden, it just seemed like they were like, here's the hair. Oh, Candy, the head's coming, and my husband's like watching, and he's just in awe. And again, I didn't think that I would want any of this, but I had a mirror so that I could see a little bit of the top of the head, and that was crazy and cool and strange. And my husband was down there, and I thought I wanted him by my head, but I was just so glad he was down there, and then he could see his son being born and see this experience and share it. And so we did, and his little head came out. And then all of a sudden, like, she was like, okay, here come the shoulders. And I didn't feel anything, by the way. No ring of fire, no nothing. I was not feeling anything. I was just tired. But, and I couldn't believe that he was coming out, because I couldn't believe my pushing was effective, because it felt so ineffective. And then she said his little hand kind of came out with the shoulder like this, which is totally telling, because he loves to have his hands by his face at all times. Like, it's really cute. It's really sweet. So he came out with his little hand in his shoulder, and he just slid out, and then they just planted this purple little alien. He had his little head all shaped like the aliens from Alien, and he was purple, and he was adorable, and he's 8 pounds and 7 ounces. I'm gonna cry thinking about it. He's just so gorgeous. I'm sorry, I'm so hormonal, but he's so beautiful, and he's so amazing, and my husband cried. It's been a little difficult for him to bond since we got home, because the baby needs, you know, Tor needs me all the time. So I might even pump a little bit so that he can bond with him more. But initially he just cried, and he was just so happy, and we were both so happy, and he held him, and he was like, I have a son, and I was like, we have a son, and I was so tired that I could hardly even, I could hardly really see him, but he was like on my chest